Welcome to today's webinar entitled Exploring the New Sharing Economy. My name is Sandy Hudson and I will be your host. Today's presentation is based on a research project funded by the NAIOP Research Foundation. NAIOP's Research Foundation fosters building better communities through practical research and education that advances the quality and makes evident the benefits of commercial real estate ownership and development. These research projects support developers, owners, and others involved in commercial real estate to meet and exceed the needs and expectations of our communities now and in the future. Examples of completed research projects are listed on the current slide. For more information on the NAIOP Research Foundation or to view our completed research, please visit www.naop.org/foundation. And now let's get on with our program. With us today is John Madden, Director, Sustainability and Engineering, Campus Plus Community Planning at the University of British Columbia. John directs the initiatives of the Sustainability and Engineering Unit, which is responsible for setting policy on resource and infrastructure management plans, operational sustainability planning and reporting, sustainability engagement programming to encourage behavioral change among staff, faculty, and students, green building programs, and providing engineering services for land use planning and permitting processes. John brings over 18 years of progressive experience working for local municipal government, international agencies, and nonprofit consulting to advance sustainability policies and implementation strategies. While working in the Middle East, John led efforts in the design and implementation of an innovative green building and sustainability program, which was awarded the Best Regional Sustainability Initiative by the World Green Building Council. Welcome, John. Thanks for being with us today.
Great. Thank you, Sandy, and thank you for the introduction. Before I begin, I'd just like to thank NAIOP for supporting this study on the sharing economy. I believe this is really an important emerging piece of work that will have huge implications on the built environment. And I think it also has challenged policymakers and regulators who grapple with the impacts on more traditional business, and it also poses some questions as to how to best protect the public interest while really allowing opportunities for economic models that have ancillary environmental and social benefits. Next slide. So just to give you a sense of what I'll be covering throughout this presentation, I'm going to start with first defining what is the sharing economy. Then I want to talk about what are the key drivers and principles behind the sharing economy, the market profile, who are the participants and key sectors that are involved within the sharing economy. Then I want to talk about the growth of the sharing economy vis-a-vis the regular traditional economy. Then I'm going to provide some examples, including food systems, car and bike share programs, accommodation, and also office and commercial space. Throughout it, I'll talk about the implications for policymakers, and I'll end with some concluding remarks. Next slide. So what is the sharing economy? The sharing economy is really had a number of different definitions, and one of the challenges has been to come up with a common definition. The sharing economy is generally referred to as the economic and social systems that enables shared access to goods, services, data, and talent. And these systems take a variety of forms, but all leverage information technology to empower individuals, corporations, nonprofits, and even government with information that enables the distribution, the sharing, and the reuse of excess capacity in both goods and services. Next slide. It really boils down to basic economics. In its most basic form, the sharing economy is about matching those that need with those that have. The sharing economy is about connecting those that have idling assets with those that need or desire for use of those idling assets. The sharing economy is more about access over ownership. The sharing economy is characterized largely by peer-to-peer marketplaces, And these marketplaces facilitate transactions in which individuals can share products and services directly based on a foundation of trust, but it's also facilitated through technology, which I'll talk more about later in this presentation. Next slide. So the sharing economy has really captured the attention of a lot of influential publications, including The Economist, which had a feature on the rise of the sharing economy and reported its impact that this new economic model is having on traditional business. Jeremy Rifkin, also a very well-respected economist, has been talking about the sharing economy and the Internet of Things over the course of the last several years. His latest book, called The Zero Marginal Cost Society, talks about the sharing economy as the third industrial revolution with significant impacts. And Time magazine claims it's one of the 10 ideas that is going to change the world. Forbes had a feature article on Airbnb and its meteoric rise and the challenge that it's made towards traditional hotel models. Next slide. So what are the drivers of the sharing economy? Well, there's three core drivers. There's the economic drivers, the technological drivers, and the societal drivers. The economic drivers were really around the downturn in the economy in 2008, which resulted in new opportunities that created economic value on idling assets and also created opportunities for new service delivery models that were cheaper and more accessible. The divide between the upper and middle classes is becoming larger, and the inability of middle income earners and lower income earners to keep up with the inflationary pressures is helping to drive the sharing economy. Rising inflation, stagnant incomes create opportunities for shared platforms that provide access to the goods and services without the high costs of ownership. The second driver is around technology. So the internet has really revolutionized our economic thinking and practice. Mobile access, including smartphones, which we all have, tablets, makes sharing via the internet a really convenient and expedient way of moving goods and services between consumers and those that offer the service. The proliferation of the internet and mobile access across North American homes has really brought about a social change through social networks that help to facilitate this peer-to-peer or P2P and peer-to-business transaction. The third driver is around societal drivers. With population rising across the globe, competing for natural resources, there is heightened awareness around the environmental impacts that mass consumption is having. And it's also increasing the amount of waste associated with this hyperconsumption that has resulted in really a rethink on access versus ownership of things. There is also a community of participants within the sharing economy that have a similar value system or social norm, that have these altruistic desires to be more sustainable in their choices. It's not all that's driving it, but it is a good significant portion of it. Next slide. So really it's around technology as the driver and some interesting facts around the use of technology. So the average US citizen or consumer spends approximately 58 minutes per day using their smartphones, and this is increasing exponentially. I know from my own peers, 58 minutes per day actually seems a little low. 90% of the data that exists today was created in the last 2 years. A phenomenal amount of information and data is available via the internet. And just in terms of social networks, if we were to actually look at Facebook as a country, it would be the most second populous country in the world. Just referencing the graphic on the bottom right, the sharing economy is really built on distributed networks of connected individuals and communities, typically facilitated through the internet. and through mobile apps. The graphic on the bottom right illustrates the power of these networks in comparison to the more traditional economic models, which are based on more centralized corporations that separate the consumer and the producer in a series of independent, vertically functional hierarchies. So you have the wholesaler on top, followed by the distributor, then the retailer that connects to the consumer. And the collaborative economy model enables producers and consumers to exchange goods and services via more distributed and decentralized network. So the graphic really shows this in spades, so showing the distribution in comparison between two cooperative organizations that are connected via 10 nodes creates opportunities for 20 connections versus two traditional hierarchical organizations which have 10 nodes only has 8 potential connections. So as that network expands, you have this kind of exponential opportunity for growth. Next slide. This just demonstrates the impact in terms of the global population growth. The world population is at nearly 7.3 billion people. Largely, most of that population is now urbanized, with 53% living in peri-urban or urban environments. What is fascinating is that almost half of that world population has access to mobile use, and almost all of them have a mobile subscription. So there's 7.1 billion subscribers to mobile apps. Next slide. So the 4 core principles behind the sharing economy is around critical mass. So really having a population density threshold within compact areas makes sectors of the sharing economy such as car or bike sharing feasible. The critical mass is also having access to a wider and more diverse market via the internet and via social marketing. The second principle is around idling capacity. Unused value represents a time that products, services, and talents lay essentially idle. And the classic example is this is with the car, which lays unused for about 92% of the time, but also applies to office space, schools, retail areas, vacant land, as an example. And this wasted value has created the significant opportunity around the sharing economy. Many of us have unused capacity through the course of the day, and with social media, information technology, we are increasingly able to donate small slivers of time to take care of simple tasks others need doing. The third principle is around belief in the commons. So belief that there's finite resources on the globe, that we need to take a role in reducing unsustainable consumption of patterns associated with the use of those resources, and the notion that self-interest and hyperconsumption is being challenged by more concern regarding the environment. And the fourth principle is really around trust, and this is really fundamental. The sharing economy relies on the will of the users to share, but in order to make that exchange, users have to be trustworthy. The sharing economy organizations say they are committed to building and validating trust and relationships among its member communities, including producers, suppliers, consumers. And the sharing economy transactions collect a significant amount of information generally related between the consumer and the seller. And it is through those transactions that we also verify information about the seller or the offer of the good or service and the consumer. And this is usually done by third-party reviews and verification around authenticity. Next slide. So this graphic wheel shows the vast array of services and goods that are available via the sharing economy. The first represents, in the blue, the assets and services including art rental, bike sharing, car sharing, toy rentals, ride sharing, and the list goes on. The second one is around collaborative lifestyles, which is actually, shown in blue. And this includes gardening, land share programs, crowdfunding, co-working spaces, storage within people's homes or vacant space, parking lots or parking spots, skill sharing. The third one is around redistribution. That's part of the wheel that's shown in green. And this includes free markets, gifts exchanges, clothing swaps, book swaps, DVD rentals, etc. Next slide. So across the different sectors of the sharing economy, we have transportation, finance, consumer goods, space, personal services, and professional services. And this graphic just represents the high-profile companies that are associated within each of those sectors. So around transportation, there's been a lot of media attention on Uber, but many other car share programs, including Relay Rides, Sidecar, Zimride, and JustPark. In terms of finance, there's the Lending Club, TransferWise. So this offers opportunities and access for alternative sources of capital. Consumer goods, including Yerdle, Gearnomics, Neighborhood Goods, Play. So toys. And then there's space and accommodation. So companies that take up this space are HomeAway, Airbnb, Liquid Space, Shared Earth, WeWork, and then personal services in skill sharing like TaskRabbit or Bellhops. And then there's professional services such as CrowdSpring and Hourly Nerd. Next slide. So Forbes estimated that in 2013, $3.5 billion in revenues were to flow through the sharing economy into people's wallets and expected a growth exceeding 25% over the next 10 years. The traditional rental sectors are being significantly impacted through technology advances and consumer demand around convenience and choice. DVD and music sectors are two examples of the dramatic shift towards the sharing platforms. Everybody is probably familiar with the demise of Blockbusters, which is a great example of the demise of that kind of more traditional retail sector around movies and DVDs. PwC projects that 5 key sharing sectors, so travel, car sharing, finance, staffing, music, and video streaming have the potential to increase revenues from approximately $15 billion today to $335 billion by 2025, which, if achieved, will represent almost half of the traditional rental sector. Next slide. So how big is the sharing economy? Well, in the United States, it's estimated that there's 80 million shares. 61% had never shared before. 23% are relatively new to the sharing economy, and 16% are people that are repeat sharers that continue to use a vast array of different services. In the UK, it's 23 million shares, with 23% that are relatively new shares, with 48% that are new to the sharing experiences, and 29 that are reshares. In Canada, it's 10 million shares, with 59% as new to the sharing economy, 25% that are relatively new, and 16 that have continued to use the sharing economy in its various forms and capacities. Next slide. So the sharing economy is really built on distributed networks of connected individuals and communities. As I said, it's typically facilitated through the internet. And unlike more traditional economic models, which are based on centralized corporations that separate the consumer from the producer in a series of vertically independent functions, the wholesaler, the distributor, and the retailer, the collaborative economy enables producers and consumers to exchange goods and services via distributed and more decentralized networks. It really impacts the patterns of production, consumption, and finance as well as through information flows. So I'm going to move now into different examples using food systems. So next slide. And next slide. So using Vancouver as an example of where the food systems is really seeing a lot of proliferation. The City of Vancouver adopted the Greenest City Action Plan target, which was to increase citywide and neighborhood food assets by a minimum of 50% over 2010 levels. And what do we mean by food assets? Well, that includes a number of community garden plots, farmers market, community orchards, composting facilities, community kitchens, community produce stands, and urban farms. And this is really meant to facilitate our ability and resiliency around food production and creating opportunities for local employment and utilization of underutilized land. Next slide. So here's an example of a company that emerged in Vancouver from this very opportunity around food systems. Soul Food Farms is a social enterprise project that was created by United We Can, which is an enterprising not-for-profit and community development group, whose tagline is a street charity that really means business. So Soul Food now includes a network of farms throughout the city of Vancouver and are providing meaningful employment to 25 individuals who are dealing with drug addiction and mental illness. The farms are also supplying fresh food to residents of the city, local restaurants and retailers, representing a successful, incredible model of high quality, innovative urban agriculture within the urban context. Next slide. Over 60 tons of food were produced last year by Soul Food and is considered one of North America's largest urban orchards on land that was not creating any economic value. So it was often utilizing vacant sites or sites that were deemed for future development, or parking lots that were being underutilized. And this just indicates some of the proliferation adjacent to the downtown of Vancouver and its communities that are adjacent to the downtown. Next slide. Food systems also have a social and community benefit. This is an example of a harvest feast that was offered up every year in one of the community gardens in the city of Vancouver. And the harvest feasts bring local residents together to celebrate food and community. It also has this social aspect that it contributes to placemaking and a sense of neighborhood cohesion. Next slide. So this is an example of the opportunity that exists around redefining underutilized space in our cities. The city of Philadelphia created the Green Plan and its vision for open space in expanding opportunities for not only green roofs but also community garden plots, and really envisions a transformative effect in terms of the urban landscape. Next slide. So now moving to the example of accommodation. Home sharing is recognized as an organized agreement between two parties in which one party rents out all or part of his or her home to another party on a temporary or one-time business. The examples that I'll refer to are Airbnb and Home Away. Next slide. And it's really changing our overall interface with travel and our demands that we place on travel. So everything in terms of choices as to where to go, what to do, where to stay, how to get around, and where to work while we're traveling, and where to eat. Next slide. This slide really demonstrates the meteoric rise of Airbnb and how it started. So essentially it was two guys in San Francisco that had um, this idea to rethink how to offer up accommodation during a high peak conference session. And they thought about renting out their own apartment with 3 air mattresses. They made a simple website and a blog with maps. Um, they actually had customers. 2 showed up, paid $80 each. And it really generated this kind of, oh, there's an appetite for actually this type of accommodation. And so they thought the idea could be expanded. And then they wanted to kind of expand and develop opportunities around funding. So they watched and launched a website. They actually did some fundraising. They actually improved the quality of the website. But they realized that, you know, the quality of the website wasn't quite as good as it could be. So they essentially got crowdfunding for additional $20,000 to really improve the quality of the website and its connectivity. And then that opportunity really in terms of the improvement and the visuals and the connectivity saw the marketplace really expand. You know, the big turning point for Airbnb is when Barry Manilow's drummer rents out an entire house, sees the opportunity, and then help raise $600,000 in seed money, and off, you know, the expansion of Airbnb, and now it has raised $7.2 million from many investors, including Ashton Kutcher. The company now is valued at, in 2014, at $10 billion in terms of valuation. So it shows the meteoric rise of this company. Next slide. This is an interesting comparison between Airbnb and Hilton hotels. So Airbnb averages 425,000 guests per night, nearly 22% more than Hilton worldwide. Hilton took 93 years to build up its empire of hotels with 610,000 rooms across 88 countries. In 4 years, Airbnb was able to amass 650,000 rooms in 192 countries. So it shows, you know, the nimbleness and the expansive growth over such a short period of time compared to really traditional hotel models. Next slide. So the old model is really on bricks and mortar. It's asset heavy, whereas the new model around accommodation is asset light. It's really along the platform of the internet that it facilitates the transaction between those that own a home or a piece of property that is made available through the internet, and that exchange is made available through that internet platform. Next slide. So it's estimated that for every 1% increase in the number of Airbnb bookings, there is a 5.05% decrease in hotel revenues. Hotels are beginning to really take notice on this, and there's some interesting examples of Marriott, which I'll talk about later, that are really using their underutilized space, meeting spaces, and partnered with Liquid Space to maximize the utility and revenue opportunities associated with their traditional hotel formats around meeting rooms. So next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about co-working and creative spaces. Next slide. The shared economy has also expanded into the commercial real estate sector. In some cases, the goal is to make better use of fixed assets that traditionally have been used for only certain portions of the day. The shared economy makes use of those fixed assets by matching people with spare space. Many forms of shared commercial space use have emerged, including various types of shared office spaces and creative spaces. And most creative spaces are often called maker spaces or hacker spaces or fab labs. and a community-operated workspace where people with common interests can access shared equipment. Over the past year, the number of co-working spaces has increased 83%, with co-working center operators like WeWork, NextSpace, Liquid Space, and others growing rapidly within this space. The co-working trend has really grown to a more than 110,000 people using the collaborative spaces across the globe. Some co-working programs even allow their members to use office spaces in other cities as well. Finally, flexible workspace like Pivot Desk and Liquid Space are helping companies and individuals locate and rent workspace with co-working centers and executive suite facilities, like I mentioned with Marriott Hotel, and even unused office space owned or leased by other companies or nonprofit groups. So it's really taking the idea of this idling asset or increased vacancies around office space and seeing an opportunity to actually expand that marketplace. And often the participants in the co-working space are younger, they're more nimble, they're contractual entrepreneurs, and so it has that ability and demand for this flexible space in different geographies across the globe. Next slide. So I just wanted to offer a concrete example of co-working space in the city of Vancouver, where I live. In downtown Vancouver, in an innovative co-working community called The Hive offers this affordable alternative that I was speaking about for small startups, freelancers, and nonprofit groups seeking a more boutique-style space with a creative sense of energy. It's a 9,000 square foot space. It offers permanent desk memberships, which include a dedicated space, hot desk memberships, which include access to the center's unassigned desk areas, and community memberships, which enable those who already have workspaces elsewhere to access the community programs and other amenities that the Hive has to offer. Member fees are then used to market and improve the space. The center, which opened in 2011, attracts individuals and organizations committed to social change. With a high level of entrepreneurship, the Hive really provides creative and collaborative opportunities within the space for very different types of businesses, from the traditional government or corporate environments of large firms. Because members share the cost of amenities and services, including the internet access, the receptionist, the kitchen, lockers, meeting rooms, rents are more affordable, which is particularly helpful in a market with escalating commercial rents. The flexible membership approach also enables members to use the space when the space is actually needed, and there's reducing the risks involved and the costs involved with long-term lease contracts that are typically required for traditional office space. Next slide. So this is an interesting example that comes out of Sweden, and it's called the HOFFICE. It's a co-working movement that is extended to the private home through a platform known as HOFFICE and aims to improve productivity among independent workers. The internet-based peer-to-peer network enables entrepreneurs and others to work from other people's home or turn their homes into co-working space. The concept is expanded to cities across the globe, including Taipei, Paris, Vienna, and Amsterdam. Again, this model isn't for everyone, but it does offer up opportunities in terms of both the consumer that is wanting and demanding and comfortable with the use of this space, and homeowners that are seeking to garner some additional income and some collaborative opportunities through networking. Next slide. So I spoke a little bit about the opportunities for collaboration between traditional hotels like Marriott that have partnered with Liquid Space. And so this strategic partnership between traditional bricks and mortar companies like Marriott, who have teamed up with Liquid Space, offer up meeting rooms that are often underutilized. Marriott benefits with increased revenue streams, mobile workers that have more choice for working space, And liquid space benefits by providing the platform to facilitate the transaction. Marriott has also gone on to expand this concept to workspace on demand, which allows people to book a space in the lobby of a Marriott hotel as easily as they can book a room overnight. So long gone are those long contracts that you sign up to rent a meeting or conference space. This is really the opportunity that exists that creates a nimble transaction that is much more expedient than the kind of traditional contractual obligations that we saw with hotels in the past. Next slide. So moving to transportation, which is also a very rapidly growing sector of the sharing economy. And I'm going to talk both about car and bike sharing. Next slide. So some interesting examples here in stats. So cars are on average sitting idle 95% of the time. And when it is driven, the average North American car is only driven 66 minutes per day. The majority of the trips in North America are via single occupant vehicles, which means that 3 out of the 4 seats are remaining unoccupied. And more than 40% of our public open space is dedicated for roads, alleys, and parking lots. So it just shows the potential in terms of the underutilized space and idling capacity within cars themselves. Next slide. So car sharing as a new platform is facilitated again through the mobile app. So the importance of connectivity through our mobile phones, but also the use of geographic positioning systems, GPS, are bringing a whole new dimension of convenience, access, and value to urban and suburban mobility. Emerging car share programs such as relay rides, Zipcar, Moto, Flightcar, Car2Go enable people to share cars by renting them for periods of shorter time than a traditional daily or weekly car rental. And those cars may be owned by the service, so Zipcar and Car2Go as an example, or by individuals. So relay rides, Moto, and Flightcar are examples of that. People are more conscientious of their decisions when they drive a shared car and are more considerate of maximizing the utility of their trips when driving a shared vehicle than they are when driving their own car. And this is because declining use is more clearly results in less money spent. So car sharing services charge competitive rates that include fuel insurance, maintenance, and other directly proportional to the member's usage, thereby encouraging more efficient and rational trip planning. According to Shelby Clark, who is the founder of Relay Rides, the average participant in a car share program drives 40% less than the average vehicle owner. Next slide. Car sharing also is shown to increase the transit usage. And car sharing essentially becomes an extension of a multimodal transportation system that provides choice and convenience. Car sharing is sometimes called the missing link in the package of alternatives to the private automobile. And members can use transit, cycling, or walking for most of their daily trips, but have access to this car when required. And empirical evidence actually suggests that car sharing results in overall increase in transit usage. According to the American study by Shaheen at UC Berkeley, over 53% of the respondents of car share programs responded that they would be likely to use transit more often. Next slide. Car sharing also suggests that, studies suggest that car sharing also induces members to bike and rollerblade more. In San Francisco, 68% of car share trips were accessed on foot, 18% by transit, and 9% by bicycle. City Car Share also reports considerable success in encouraging members to make combined transit car sharing trips, particularly to avoid congestion and tolls on bridges especially in San Francisco and the Oakland Bay area. Members that were polled in the San Francisco area indicated that they were more likely to increase their use of biking in association with car sharing. Next slide. And there's also ancillary environmental benefits to car sharing. Report estimates that CO2 emission reductions could be as high as 56%. The number of private automobiles car sharing vehicle replaces is between 9 and 13 cars. The number of sold vehicles due to car sharing is 25%. And the number of foregone vehicle purchases due to car sharing is also estimated to be 25%. Next slide. Moving to bike sharing. So bike sharing programs began in Europe many decades ago and have expanded commercially across the globe. They now have presence on 5 continents in 500 cities with 500,000 bikes available to share. Bike sharing has experienced the fastest growth of any mode of transport in the history of the planet. And as illustrated in the graph, which shows that in 2002 there were only 7 bike share services worldwide, now growing to close to 500. Bike sharing programs are best suited to denser, more compact cities which have supporting end-use bike infrastructure, included designated bike paths, bike lanes, signage, and other complementary modes of transportation, as I mentioned before, like transit and car share services. Bike share programs are popping up across North America as part of the extension of the sustainable transportation option for shorter trips. And in fact, cities are now addressing this as part of their sustainable transportation plans as part of a mode of transportation that has opportunity to shift between more traditional car-oriented modes of transportation. Next slide. So using the example of San Francisco's rideshare program, it's really pushing not only the integration of the car share with bike share, with a plan that allows members to really expand their transportation options with access to both bikes and cars. City car share members will have access to bicycles across 25 locations within the region, most of which will be in Berkeley. The program plans to provide 90 bikes, of which 22 will be electric cargo bikes. And whether they are operated as a single program or as a separate once alone, bike and car sharing programs are really helping to expand the array of sustainable transportation options. And these programs allow people to increase access and mobility through improved intermodal connectivity. It's important, though, in designing a bike share program that we really understand the profile of the market, and it's important to define what are the supporting densities, what are the nodes of attractions and destinations, the topography of the city, which is especially important in cities like San Francisco, that really support direct and convenient access through the program design. There's also the ancillary aspects around bike sharing, and that's around data sharing. So there's an enormous amount of data that is associated with the length of the trip, the destination, the origination, the route traveled, that gives city planners an idea as to how to plan for future bike routes as well. When designing a bike share program, you need to also define what are the other supporting policies, like transportation demand management strategies, such as parking charges and regulations, tolls, gas taxes, that encourages the shift between the private automobile and these other modes of transportation. Next slide. This just demonstrates the spatial and economic impacts associated with a single occupant vehicle and the demand for space that is really becoming quite valuable in cities across the globe. And this is city space dedicated for parking, road space, And it also addresses congestion across North American cities. The average cost of a parking space, as an example, ranges between $24,000 in an above-grade garage or upwards of $40,000 underground. So the opportunities in terms of economic development and really utilizing scarce space within high-density cities is becoming more prevalent. Next slide. I think the sharing economy has flourished in the absence of government policy. And despite incentives and regulations, it is, however, posing some unique challenges to local regulators who find that they have to find the balance between protecting the public interest without suppressing the potential benefits of new business models. And this is especially prevalent with accommodations and with transportation around Uber, as has been seen across the media of late. With respect to accommodation, regulators and municipal officials, as well as real estate professionals and others, expressing increasing concern about the impact of short-term rentals that do not comply with local laws regulating units within multifamily units, buildings as an example. And affordable housing advocates are also concerned because shared accommodation sites are now resulting in the loss of affordable housing and potential for eviction of long-term tenants. Some fear that property owners are evicting existing long-term tenants from low-cost housing so that owners can actually capitalize on these short-term stays with higher turnover resulting in increased rental incomes. And cities are really grappling with how best to regulate these services with public interest and consumer protection in mind. Next slide. So some concluding thoughts on the sharing economy. Really around the idling capacity, most organizations have spare capacity in some form. Manufacturing facilities are shown to operate at an average of 20% below peak capacity, and in most offices around half the desks are unused at any point in the day. So developing a B2B sharing program, business-to-business sharing agreements, allow these assets to be used more efficiently and rationally. Similarly, intangible assets such as intellectual property or brand assets, which have previously been closed or proprietary, can be shared easily through technology. And more flexible operating models are emerging, changing workers' expectations and encouraging innovation within the process. The sharing economy also offers platforms that can be used to help companies make more use of these assets and reduce costs and potentially develop new revenue streams, as I demonstrated with a number of examples before. And last slide. So this is a great quote from Mark Levine from the New York Times. He's quoted as saying, "Sharing is to ownership that the iPod is to the 8-track, what the solar panel is to the coal mine. Sharing is clean, crisp, urbane, postmodern. Owning is dull, shellfish, timid, and backward." So that concludes my presentation. We'll now open it up to questions.
Thank you, John. Yes, we have a couple of questions. First question, are there any examples of the sharing economy in brick and mortar retail?
Sorry, repeat that question?
Are there any examples of the sharing economy in brick and mortar retail stores?
Well, it's interesting. So in Vancouver, the concept of pop-up shops has emerged. So in typical commercial retail units that either are just coming onto market that don't have a lease agreement signed up are being offered up for what's called pop-up opportunities, and these can be very nimble local retailers that kind of pop into the space It can be artists and creative industries that use the space until the lease contract, a more traditional lease contract, is actually signed. And so again, it's a great example of one, animating vacant space along key retail streets that you want that animation to happen. And the secondly is it's creating, again, opportunities for an idling piece of real estate to actually generate some revenues. Maybe not as much as a typical long-term lease contract, but nevertheless providing revenue streams in that process.
Okay. What are the economic benefits of a peer-to-peer sharing economy platform as opposed to a traditional sales or rental platform?
Sorry, Sandy, say that again.
What are the economic benefits of a peer-to-peer sharing economy platform as opposed to a traditional sales or rental platform?
Well, really, it's around the agility of a direct consumer to vendor relationship. And so there's a savings potential in terms of cost. One, there's ability for more choice for the consumer. So rather than kind of going to its traditional retail outlet, all of a sudden the emergence of the sharing economy presents a whole array of new alternatives and choices. The other thing is around the convenience of the transaction. So many of these transactions are happening via the internet. You don't even have to leave your home. And so that convenience and access is actually, and it's facilitated, as I mentioned before, through kind of the core principles around, trust. So there's increasing efforts to improve security on the transaction, and also in terms of the information related to the vendor and the consumer through third-party verification is actually helping to build that trust. Mm-hmm. I think that, more traditional consumers, or sorry, more traditional big box retailers like Walmart are beginning to examine the potential for actually using their consumer base for retail customers that actually come to the store to actually deliver groceries or some of the products from their store to people that are perhaps a little less mobile, that live along the route that person is taking on the way home. And so the consumer actually that is visiting the store gets paid to make the delivery. Again, this is a model that's based very much on trust and also convenience, but it's also recognizing the opportunity that Walmart wants to do in terms of reducing costs, in terms of using traditional delivery services, but it also provides an income stream for low-end consumers that are seeking, to generate a little bit more revenue for their trip that they would do otherwise.
Okay. Next question. Has there been any projections made on how office sharing or co-working spaces will affect occupancy levels in traditional office space?
Great question. So there are some estimates, not off the top of my head, unfortunately, but it is showing an impact in terms of the type of space and the demand that is placed on that space. As I mentioned before, it is, in terms of the demand that is placed on commercial office space, it's usually the smaller, more nimble contractor that is seeking the use of that space, or somebody that is perhaps on a business trip that needs to use a temporary space. So that type of demand doesn't impact necessarily the kind of long-term traditional office space, but nevertheless it is having some impact in terms of the overall spatial demand that is being placed with the emergence of smaller contractors. You're always going to have demand for the kind of AAA traditional office for companies. I think the kind of stability and continuation around that will not see a dramatic decline, but you will see at the fringes some impacts in terms of smaller, more boutique office space being impacted.
Okay. Next question. Do we know if companies like WeWork are profitable?
I don't know offhand, actually, Sandy. You know, I guess the test of time will tell. So if they're in existence a year from now, that will be one indicator.
Right, okay. And last question, what do you think will be the next big thing in the mainstream sharing economy? What new good or service will be made available through sharing economy?
Great question. You know, it's wherever there is an underutilized opportunity. And I use the example of flight car. You know, flight car, the concept is that when you go to the airport, you typically drive, you have to pay for parking, you go on your trip, you arrive at your destination, you have to rent a car. And so the concept behind flight car is that you actually take your car to the airport, it goes into a rental pool. It actually generates income while you're away rather than having to pay for parking while you're away. And the same service is being offered on the other end. So when you arrive, you have access to this pool of cars that are being offered at a lower rate than a traditional rental car. And this started in San Francisco, is now expanding across North America, and is expected to grow into Canada as well. So again, it's really the opportunities are boundless. You know, some of them are, you know, just simply an expansion of kind of the altruistic kind of free market concept where there is no exchange in terms of a monetized exchange. But then there's these models that are really capitalizing on assets and space that have intrinsic value. So, you know, the opportunities are boundless. If I could predict where it's going to expand next, I'd probably be a very rich man.
Okay. Thanks for a great presentation, John, and giving us an overview of your research report and discussing the impact that the sharing economy is having on our cities. If you have additional questions for John, his contact information is listed on the current slide. Please fill out the short survey that will follow. Thank you for attending our session and have a good day.